Check, check. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here on what day is it today? Tuesday, the 14th. I've lost days and lost time, but I'm very, very grateful for your presence. We're going to begin this meeting, and if I could, I'm going to ask Senator Hatchett if he would to open us with a word of prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us here today. Thank you for the safe travels that we had. Please continue to bless us and continue to use us to do your will. Please help us all to get home to our families safely tonight. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. We only have one agenda item. I'd like to start with just an announcement or two. At this time in the session, I think all of us are aware of the activity level and the intensity level, and many of us have bills in the House, and many of the House members have bills in the Senate. So we're really having to juggle schedules. But this afternoon we're going to hear Senate Bill 212 as hearing only, because we want to begin the discussion and understand exactly what is proposed and how it might be implemented. I'm going to have an opportunity to present the bill. I'll ask Vice Chairman Williams to assume the chair. I'll quickly present the bill, and then we're going to welcome input. So that's the agenda for today. We're going to have a chance to go through Senate Bill 212. We had originally had a committee meeting for Thursday morning at 8 a.m. We've been preempted by appropriations. Also meeting at 8 a.m. on Thursday. So what we've been able to do is reschedule our Thursday morning meeting for tomorrow afternoon. So that'll be Wednesday afternoon at 5 o'clock. And the only other option was Thursday afternoon at 5 o'clock. So I chose the lesser of two evils. And so we'll be here this afternoon at 5:30 now, tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So I wanted to make sure we're trying to put the notices out now so that committee members and interested parties will know about that. We will hear two bills in committee tomorrow afternoon, and we will take action on one bill, a House bill. I don't have the number, but it's on it'll be a House bill coming over. We're going to take action on that. And we're going to hear two bills. We're going to hear 226, which is Senator Harbin's bill. And I believe Senator Halpern's bill, Senator, I think that's 101. Is that right? But we'll have that on the agenda for tomorrow afternoon. So at this time, I want to ask Vice Chairman Williams if he'll assume the chair, and I'll quickly work through Senate Bill 212.
You need your water.
I need my water. Thank you. And my phone. The phone's just time.
Yeah,
I'll be the timekeeper.
you gonna be the timekeeper? All right. Let's see. All right, Chairman Burns, present your bill, please,
All
sir.
right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the vice chair taking over for this component. I want you to be aware that Senate Bill 212 is not an original bill that I developed. It was brought to me by Senator Gooch, as well as election officials, which you'll hear in a few minutes from Scott Chastain. And they brought to me the need to consider looking at the issue of probate judges and their responsibilities to conduct elections. Out of 159 counties in Georgia, roughly 27, and that number goes up or down, so 25, 26, 27 counties utilize the probate judge as the election official. All other counties in Georgia, so the rest of the crowd, the 130 or so, 32 or so, all have local election boards. So that the intent of this legislation is to move all counties from the probate judge responsibility for elections to a local election board. And that brings us to Senate Bill 212. So the intent of the bill is to develop an approach to move election responsibility from the probate judge to a local election board. So this is a pretty intense bill, and I would suggest to you, I'm not going to read it to you. I'm not going to go through it line by line, but I am going to go through it section by section so that you will know what's included in that. If you start in section 1, you'll find that the first sections 1, 2, 3, 4, and 3 and 4 all remove references to the probate judge as being responsible to perform elections. So if you look at line 25, you look at the lines 41 through 43, where those things are struck, that language strikes the stipend that the probate judge would receive. Line 53, it just strikes the reference to the probate judge. Line 61 in section 4 strikes the reference to the probate judge. So those first 4 sections essentially say the probate judge is no longer responsible for elections. Section 5, we're going to spend a little time on section 5. Section 5 is the section that creates local election boards. And I want you to know, this is a proposal. It's not set in any stone. It can be modified. It can be adjusted. It can be adapted. It can, whatever is the will of the committee. We can change things in section 5, but in section 5, that's where the creation of a local election board is defined. So if you'll look on lines, 77 through 79, you'll note it says the county in which a judge of probate court serves as the election superintendent, the governing authority of each county shall and is directed to create a board of elections and registration. So it creates a local election board. Down on line 90, it indicates that board should be 5 members. If you flip the page to lines 92, really, probably through the end of the page, it discusses how those 5 members are selected. And in lines 92 through 118, it identifies 2 members would be coming from the party that received the most votes in the last governor's election in that community. And that executive committee of that party would nominate 5 people, and then the commission would select those 5 people. So the county executive committee of the party would nominate 5 members. The county governing body would select 2 of those. The same thing is true on page 6, lines 119 down through the end of the page. Same thing for the party that receives the second largest number of votes. So you had you're creating a local board of 5 members, 2 members from the party that received the most votes in the last governor's election, 2 members from the party that received the second largest number. And then finally, on page 7, the top of the page, at this point, the probate judge would appoint 1 member to that board, and that member would serve as the chair. Again, all of these organizational components are subject to discussion. They're subject to debate. I'm not married to any particular approach. And I would suggest to you there's probably not a perfect approach, but I'm not married to any particular approach. And I welcome the input from the committee as we move forward with this discussion. So that's how the 5 members are created. In lines 54 and 56, they serve 2-year terms. Candidly, in my own perspective, I think that might be a bit short, and we might want to look at that. It also then goes on and allows members to succeed themselves. It provides for how to handle vacancies on page 8. Since this legislation is being considered as a hearing only and no action would occur until 2024, some of the dates in here are not realistic or acceptable. So we'll have to adjust the dates appropriately along those lines. Now, I call your attention. And so if you look on line 186 on January the 1st of 2024, that's not a realistic point at this point in time. So we've got to look at dates, and we've got to talk about the timeline. If we choose to do this, we have to plan for the transition. We have to plan a transitional program from probate judges being responsible for elections to a local election board responsible for elections and registration. So if you look at lines 192 and following, probably to about end of page, let's stop at 206. That's organizing language to allow the election board to organize itself and fix resolutions and have meetings and have a written record. I think one sticking point we're going to have to discuss, and we look forward to input from our guest here today on lines 207 and following. There's a requirement to identify an election administrative director. So if you look on line 207 and 208, each board shall be responsible for the selection and appointment of an administrative director to be known as the election supervisor to administer and supervise and conduct elections, primaries, and registration elections for the county. Okay, that supervisor serves at the pleasure of the board. So at the end of the day, the Board of Elections would have to identify and engage an election supervisor. That could be if you look down on line 218, we're talking about, and this is a sticking point, certainly with our counties. On line 218, it says each board shall be authorized to employ such full or part-time employees, including at this point in 219, it says a full-time clerk. So we've got to look at the challenge that counties have with having to employ a full-time clerk, if indeed it is required to be full-time. And then all the funding would be appropriated by the local governing authority with their consent. And if looking on page 10, the county funds are required to support the compensation of any employees and handle the supervision and clerk's duties. Realize that counties pay the probate judge a stipend, fairly nominal stipend, by the way, to conduct elections. So we'd have to recognize that that would be a challenge. If you move on to section 6, 6 strikes again language relating to probate judges' responsibility in sections page 10 and 11. And then at the top of page 12, we repeal section 7, we repeal section 8. There's cleanup language in 9, there's cleanup language in 10. And in 11, there is the establishment of fees, payment, qualification fees, fixing and publishing qualification fees. I would have to defer to Ledge Counsel. I don't see Mr. Morelli here this afternoon, but I'd have to defer to Ledge Counsel to see if that is already codified or if that's changed. But section 11 deals with fees, and then the rest of the legislation is cleanup. So if we go back to the beginning, the intent of the legislation is to move election responsibilities in Georgia from the probate judge to a local election board. So that's the objective. And I would suggest to you, I have to my knowledge, I have every county that currently uses a probate judge. Baldwin, Bleckley, Calhoun, Candler, Chattahoochee, Chattooga. I got to get that number right. Clay, Colquitt, Dodge, Eccles, Evans, Gilmer, Glasscock, Grady, Jasper, Jenkins, Lawrence, Quitman, Shelley, Scriven, Seminole, Tolliver, Telfair, Trutland, Wayne, Warren, and Wilkes, we think. Now, I want you to understand in the 23rd Senate District that I represent, 4 of the counties in my district out of 11 currently use a probate judge for elections. 4 out of 11, almost half. They're small counties. They're predominantly rural. They've done a good job. I want to thank our probate judges because they've done a great job in administering elections. But as you know, elections become more challenging and more complex. And in order to enhance the confidence of the voters in those communities, I believe they should have a voice in the local election process. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to try to answer any questions, or we can defer to our guests who are here to speak to the bill.
I have one question now. See.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the probate judge in some of the counties, and one of the counties that I know of that's in, excuse me, that's in my district is White County. We had a really, really good probate judge that handled all the elections. He retired. With moving forward, will this preclude a probate judge, say in one of the counties that you listed, from being on the Board of Elections?
The probate judge, the way this bill is structured, would not be a part of the Board of Elections.
But could they?
I don't see a restriction, but that's a very good question. I think we probably need to investigate that. At least under this proposal, the probate judge would appoint the chair of the local election board. Now, I will suggest to you that there are any number of ways we could do that. We could have the local governing authority do it, or we could have the 4 members. There's any number of ways, and I'm open to those ways. I think the core question is, should we move to a local election board in these counties that currently utilize a probate judge? And my understanding is, and we're going to hear from Mr. Chastain in a few minutes from Bartow County, not Bartow, Gilmer County. Scott, I'm sorry, I was thinking another issue. Gilmer County. Thank you, Scott. He speaks for and represents the probate judges, and they're pretty much unanimous about their desire to move toward local election boards. And the reason why this bill was not introduced before crossover was because we need this time to work through it to determine if it's the right thing to do. And if it is, how should it be done? I will say right now, any one of the counties that currently use a probate judge can, through local legislation, they can adopt local legislation that would create a local election board. I've done that for Scriven County this year. And we can use that process. But if we use the process of allowing the counties to request local legislation, what we will see is we will see probate judges responsible for elections for an extended period of time. And we'll see. I'm open to discussion.
And if I can follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Gilmer, sorry.
The one thing that I am worried about is, we want the best people to run the elections in each county. And sometimes in smaller rural counties, the best person may be the probate judge. So I know this is a hearing only and we're exploring ideas. I just want to explore that idea to see if the best person is the probate judge and he still wants to do it, if he could at least be on the election board. That's number one. And then number two, are we in essence doing away with the county election superintendent? I see the municipal election superintendent is still going to be in code, but a county election a county election superintendent, we would in essence do away with that position.
I think what you would see here is that the probate judge currently serves as the election superintendent in these counties. And I believe the way the language in this proposed legislation is, it's referred to as an election supervisor or an administrative director. It also identifies the term chief clerk. So I think that's malleable as well. And I think we can, again, fundamentally, the question is, should we move to this concept or not? And then if we choose to move to this concept, how best to do it?
That's me, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, my question is, why are we doing a Senate bill after crossover? You touched on it, but you didn't.
We're
answer
doing the Senate bill after crossover to discuss the concept, not to take action.
We can't take action.
Can't
Mr.
take
Chairman.
Don't intentionally design that way, Madam Leader.
Yeah.
We wanted to have the discussion at the end of this session to give consideration and give us time over the next 7 months, 8 months, 9 months to gain input from your constituents, from your local environment,
Mhm.
from your counties, from your probate judges, looking at this proposal for setting up a local election board and considering others. So the objective here is just to put this concept on the table, put it in front of the committee, asking you to consider it, think about it, explore it. We'll come back in January of 2024. And if there is support for moving forward, then we are in a position to have a basis to work from. You're going to hear today from both sides. I would say both sides. By the way,
Maybe.
both sides agree,
Maybe.
but I want you to hear from the probate judges. I want you to hear from the counties. And I want you to talk to your constituents back in your districts.
Mhm. My concern is though that we could have waited to April. I was in a committee that's doing legislation that we will be acted on this week and
Right.
next week.
Right.
And this is interrupted by,
Well, I appreciate your support here. I appreciate your attendance and I recognize that, and we talked about this early on. If you have a conflict, I understand. And since no action is being taken at this meeting, then
that
I'm
means
grateful
probably,
for you being here, but I acknowledge that you may have higher priorities.
right.
Tomorrow, we
exactly
need to act on one bill and we'll put it up front and we'll have a hearing on a couple of other bills. So if those bills are not critical to your immediate needs, I understand that. I would suggest that after the meeting tomorrow, we have no more ethics meetings scheduled for this term, which I'm delighted.
See, Senator Mallow, did you, what's your number?
14.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to Chairman Burns. Appreciate the bill. You named a lot of counties that I passed coming down I-16, coming back to Chatham County. But in Chatham County, we do have an elected board of elections and an appointed board of registrars. We are not consolidated, one of the very few, I think, in the state. So I like the idea of bringing consistency to what we do as a state. And my only question would be, for example, in a county like the senator from the Camellia, 55th. If the county, could the probate court judge, if there was a judge that wanted to do it, could serve as the election superintendent, how would that, work? I know we're going to hear from the judges, but I just want to make sure there may be some folks who want to continue. And if that flexibility exists, I would definitely want to support that.
I would concur, and I would suggest that the legislation in its final form could accommodate that. So we could have a local election board, but the election supervisor or superintendent could continue to be the current probate judge. And that might not be a good idea, especially in some of my smaller counties where we have probate judges now. But going back to one of the tenets, the constituencies in these communities, I would like to see them have representation on a local election board so that they are in a position to oversee their elections in their county and their municipalities. There's a great deal of positives that come out of that.
I
that
agree.
local oversight and that local engagement. And right now, the probate judge is pretty much out there on an island. And sometimes, and most of the times, they do an excellent job, but they're not immune to criticism. And I would think that if we had a local election board supporting their efforts, then that could deflect some of the problems of criticism and concern.
No, absolutely. And I don't disagree. I think most probate court judges have to be elected as well. So
That's right.
I'm certain that they don't want any undue stress in a nonpartisan, race. Judges are nonpartisan. So thank you, Senator. I'd like to work with you to support the bill. I know that probably is a strange deal. I see the senator from the 55th looking at me, but I think we can come to a really,
That may say
Have a
my
meeting
good
on
friend
this.
Savannah and I agreed on a bill on the floor today, and I'm so grateful for that. And
that was on principle, Senator.
that's right.
Senator Harbin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like your bill, and I think the idea behind it, just thought process, since this is, we're in a biennial, we got this and we got time for next year, but thinking about that, I think the concept, one of the things I was thinking about is that your probate judges have been handling this, would it be good for them for a period of time, maybe a year or 2 years, to be maybe even not in an official capacity, but in an advisory capacity, to be there, to know what's going on, where things are, what's going on. I just see that a lot of times when we lose institutional knowledge, that's a big part of helping this new board be successful. And I would see having the probate judge, maybe if it's an advisory capacity or in some temporary capacity, would just be a good idea for the logistics, the activities that would go on, since he's already been dealing with them to start with.
I think the senator has a very good idea and a key point. We recognize that any transition, if we were to move that way, we move from a transition from a probate judge to a local election board, that's going to require time for the training and the transition and the development of the new staff and members of the board. And that's another reason why we want to have this discussion today and not a year from now. Because if we had the initial discussion a year from now or 9 months from now,
Right.
we wouldn't be in a position to move in any kind of an expeditious way. So I would hope that we can find a good balance there and include the probate judge and include the probate judge's knowledge and expertise. We acknowledge the fact that the probate judge periodically is on the ballot. So there's this potential in some people's minds, not necessarily a real concern, but a perceived concern, that since they're on the ballot and they're running their own elections.
Right.
Okay, now I would acknowledge the Secretary of State is on the ballot. The Secretary of State runs his own elections, but that's a statewide office.
Right.
This is a local office. So I think one of the other potential benefits of adjusting it to a local election board is to provide the probate judge with a bit of independence when it comes to holding his own election. His or her own election.
One last question, I'm just curious, we would need to look at cost wise, in that we're paying one person versus 5 people. Are we going to have any kind of cost differential that we're going to have to consider there?
We're already paying for the elections so that the counties already have individuals handling the registration and the execution of elections, both full and part-time individuals. We would not see this as an additional cost, but as an organizational change.
Okay.
So likely the people who are doing the day-to-day activities of these offices would continue to do those. It's just that they would be responsible to a local election board as opposed to a probate judge.
Thank you.
All right, madam. Did you want to speak again? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Is that your?
Yeah, I'm 6. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was on the nominees, I guess, coming from the 2 political parties where they're actually elected, so to speak. They're selected by the county commission.
They're selected.
They're selected
Not
by the county commission. Could it not be where the 2 political parties basically just submit the names that they want to the county commission and are ratified instead of actually being selected by the county commission?
I would suggest that at this point, the whole proposal is very malleable and we can adjust anything that the committee is comfortable with. I would suggest that I would say one of the issues that we face in Georgia is we have a great deal of inconsistency in our local election boards and how they are created and how many there are on the board and a number of things. I would say that my understanding of the more appropriately configured local election boards, it is when they adopt this approach to say the party identifies some number of nominees. This number says 5. It could be fewer, it could be more. And then from that group of nominees from the party, the local commission selects 2 members. I would, but I'm open. I'm open. I'm not married to any particular way to create a local election board. I do think 5 is a better number than 3. I know that some of our local election boards in Georgia are 3-member boards. I find those to be a bit potentially problematic. I think 5 is a better way to share that responsibility, but how they might be identified, I do think I like the fact that in this case, not in all, and in this case, both parties within a community have equal representation on a local election board. And in this case, the probate judge would identify the chair, which I would hope would be a nonpartisan chair. And I'll be candid and suggest to you that if it's the will of the committee can make the probate judge the chair. All right, so you could consider that. But I want you to understand that this is a concept proposal. This is not a final version.
If I can have one more, Mr. Chair, I guess I'm just kind of working through it because it would seem kind of odd and just kind of work through it that like in Augusta, you have a nonpartisan board that says we're nonpartisan, but yet you're getting involved in party politics.
Right.
It's just odd to me.
Well, that's a very good point. In an ideal world, I think we could say that we have a nonpartisan board. And I think we do have nonpartisan local elections at the municipal level and at some other county levels. But the reality is that most communities are more oriented toward a political affiliation, and we want to make sure that those political affiliations have representation on a local election board.
I want to put on my registrar hat a minute.
All right, happy to.
I served as board of registrars for 16 years as chief registrar. Our names were submitted by the grand jury. And then the chief judge made that selection of that circuit. Once we were appointed to that board, we became more nonpartisan because you take an oath and you're handed the code book. So then you start looking at elections. You want to run correctly, fair, open, and transparent. And I started under Lewis Massey, and then under Kathy Cox, then under Karen Handel, then under Brian Kemp. So I had Democrats and Republicans, but you're talking about training also. VRAG, Voters Registrars Association of Georgia, and the election officials of Georgia have now combined their training. So they do annual training to go over what legislature or legislation has passed, what rules have been enacted by the state election board, and procedure. So, they go through training annually. Yeah, I would like to see the chief judge make the appointment. I would like to see it be for 4 years and maybe staggered terms, because you don't want to lose everybody at once. I hear you on the parties. I would like for the names to all be submitted maybe to the grand jury, and the grand jury they examine everything in a nonpartisan way. And here again, I'm just discussing from my experience. From my years and attending training, it was always about policy and procedure. You did have some boards and some counties that were more political than others, but all in all, a lot of probate judges, and I want to shout out to mine, especially Todd Blackwell down in Baldwin County, is exceptional. He has run elections for a long, long time. And he, and there again, the Board of Registrars had 2 full-time people and a part-time person. And then the probate judge, when the election cycle started, then he started using his county employees also. And so there's going to be a need for possibly more training. So it may take more staff to do this, because whenever they started the election cycle and started that work in the elections, then some of his probate stuff kind of got pushed to the side burner because of the importance of the elections. That's my 2 cents worth. If anybody else has anything they want to add.
I appreciate the input. I appreciate the experience and expertise that the vice chairman provides. And I think all those are things that the committee should consider. Again, this proposal is an opportunity for us to begin the dialogue and discussion and determine whether or not this is a path we wish to pursue.
Well, I think this is correct, and I thank you for doing this, because this is not something that we need to jump in and have it done and legislation passed, and then the counties have to react to it rather than be involved in the planning of it. And I think this will give all the other election officials in the state of Georgia an opportunity to be heard also, which they deserve to be heard and need to be heard from. They have been the people pulling off these elections, and it's very important.
Mr. Chair, if it's appropriate, I'd like to allow those who are here to provide input. And I know we have at least
I have 3 on Zoom.
3 on Zoom, and I want
I'd
to
like
give
to
them
hear from them.
hear from them. And then we will take this as input and move forward with our business tomorrow afternoon. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
well, let's start with the ones on Zoom. Here we go. Whoever you want to pull up, Mr. Wizard, sir.
John Graham.
John Graham. Yes, sir, Mr. Graham, you're on.
Good afternoon. Appreciate the time. Sorry, I'm not able to be in Atlanta, but I just got through at a commissioners meeting here in Warren County. And I have been talking to Senator Burns. He's my senator, and we've had some discussions on this issue. And I'm glad that the brakes kind of got put on it, because I think it was going too fast. I don't have a issue with the change. My probate judge, he's on Zoom today with us. Jeremy Rachels is in favor of this being changed from probate. I do hate to see that, because he has done a wonderful job over a number of years for us. And I just appreciate all he's done to make sure our elections are handled. There's a lot of issues in this, and I would just glad that we've taken the time to go through it. There is going to be additional costs to the county. Currently in Warren County, as it was stated, there's a small monthly fee that probate gets for doing elections, and then his staff helps with elections. Board of Registrars, we have a person that handles that, but also does other duties here. And so that, combining these things into this election board, is going to cost some additional funds that we got to figure out. because it is going to take additional help. And the other thing is, on the off years, there's not a lot for them to do. So just a little bit on the registrar side. So we got to figure out how to make it all work and be able to be feasible with the funding we have available. There's some stuff in there talking about compensation for members. I think it should be considered. There's already, I believe in statute, I believe is where it's at. The board of registrars are paid on a monthly fee. We pay them every month, and the gentleman that has some experience there probably could answer that better than I can. But so that might be a fee schedule to look at for the board. I do want to point out, I think we need to look at a way of doing the appointments. Maybe the way it's done with the grand jury is a good way. Here in Warren County, neither party really is set and has a very good committee of people. They don't meet on any kind of basis on either side of the parties here. So I don't know that we could get them to even provide the names of anyone, because they don't meet on any kind of regular basis, if they meet at all. So you might want to consider that. So I just look forward to being able to be a part of this as we move forward. And I think there's some things that we need to look at going through this. I do think that it says some stuff in here about the board being over this person, and the board's going to be a volunteer group of people that come and meet once a month on most occasions. So I think there should be some better oversight. I'm charged as the full-time chairman of the Board of Commissioners. We don't have a manager here. I am the full-time day-to-day manager and chairman. We need to have, because all the complaints are going to come to me from anything that happens from this office if it's established. I think we need to look at how some of those things might be addressed also. So look forward to being able to work with every one of y'all as we move forward, because I think we need to work on the bill to make sure it's right before it moves forward. So I appreciate y'all putting the brakes on it so we can get this thing right. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So you're the chairman of the county commission?
Yes, sir.
Judge Rachel's is a probate judge.
Right.
He's on Zoom as well.
Right. Well, okay. Judge Rachel's. Thank you, Mr. Graham. Appreciate you. We'll now ask for Judge Rachel's.
Thank you.
Judge Rachel's, you there? I guess go with Jeremy.
If y'all want to come back, I got Judge Rachel's right here.
There he is. Okay.
Microphone was.
All right.
I didn't really have a whole lot to say about it other than, as Commissioner Graham said, that I am absolutely in favor of it. I've been elections for Warren County for about close to 25 years at this point. And I've always enjoyed it, but I don't know, through whatever fault, it's really gotten to be a tedious process, particularly combined with all the other duties that the probate judge has. Because I'm not sure that a lot of you may know, but in Warren County, for instance, I'm probate judge, magistrate judge, election superintendent, and also do traffic court, as well as a vital records custodian. And it's fine, I don't mean that, but the election superintendent in the past has always sort of been I won't say it's been a back burner issue outside of election year, but it's really turned into almost a full-time duty in and of itself. And that's probably the main reason why I'm in support of it as much as anything, because it's just simply, I don't have as much time to devote to it as probably it needs to be devoted to at this point. So, really about all I had to say about it. I realize the legislature that has to be decided on and all that. I mean, like to be hashed out, but
Come back.
that's above my pay grade. I just wanted to simply say that I am absolutely in support of it. So trust everybody to make the right decision. So anyway, that's all on my end.
Fine. Thank you, Judge. We appreciate your input. I appreciate Chairman Graham's input. We're going to move quickly to our guests who are in the room. And I'd like to just go through the list of those who would like to speak to the measure. And then I want to, after Mr. Edwards speaks, I want to invite our probate judges who are here to also share some input. So let's start with Stephanie Ali. Ms. Ali.
Thanks, sir. Hello, sir. We'd originally been ready to speak in opposition to the bill, but I'm sorry, sir.
Just your name and your organization, just for the record. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm Stephanie Ali. I'm the policy director at New Georgia Project Action Fund. And as I was saying, we were originally planning to oppose, but I think with the new timeline that you just laid out, sir, and changes, we're really excited to see that. Overall, the idea behind this bill is a good one. We would now like to make a couple of suggestions since that time is now a little bit more open. I do want to kind of follow up with something that Senator Harbin was questioning around the cost, and that just came up with our guest from Warren County. In pulling this together, I was looking at 24 of the counties. I was off just a little bit from your count.
Okay.
24 of the counties.
It's very fluid.
It was a little hard to track.
Right.
As is one of our problems for kind of keeping up with elections in Georgia. But of the 24 counties that do work under probate judges, they range from having total budgets of 25 million down to 1.5 million for the counties. So even adding something small as one additional staff person, we're talking about $56,700 for one staff person, and that's for their staffing once you include insurance, SSI. And I pulled that from Wilkes County's example. That's up to 2 to 3% of the cost of the budget for some of these smaller counties, even one additional staff person. So that is, I think, an important piece of consideration as to what Senator Harbin pointed out, that even if we're not talking about a considerable size change, although for a county like Baldwin, which is the 46th largest county in Georgia, we could be talking about needing multiple staff people. Even adding that little bit could considerably change a pretty large percentage of appropriation need. So it would be our suggestion that we don't leave this strictly up to the counties to have to find new funding with something like SB 222 going through at the same time that limits additional funding opportunities for boards of elections. We would suggest that this committee and others work to continue to find appropriations within the state budget to provide, even if it's one time, to these counties as they develop this new piece of their system. Additionally, to Senator Jones's point about how these boards would be made up. While I agree, I think it is an equitable way to make up a board. Of my count, 12 of these counties are missing one or both of the parties present in their counties at this time that are not active. I believe the good judge, or might have been the good commissioner, kind of mentioned the same thing. It would be very difficult for the parties to potentially make suggestions in a short timeline for who those are. So that may go back to Senator Williams' suggestions on how to find equitable ways to bring forward the right people for these counties. In such small counties, I mean, we're talking about Tolliver having 1,500 people, finding 5 people to fit onto a board is a considerable task. It's already hard in DeKalb and Fulton counties.
We recognize those challenges.
Yes, sir.
And we appreciate your input, but this is going to be an ongoing discussion.
Yes, sir.
And I want to include your input as well as others. But thank you.
That is it. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you
sir.
for sharing. And I thank you. I appreciate your input. Again, we are looking forward to continued discussion. You bring up good points, and that's why we're taking the time to evaluate the challenges.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
We look forward to following up.
Thank you. I am going to have to get a phonetic spelling from my good friend Vasu Abiram Aman. I'm close. I need a good phonetic spelling, and I want to thank Mr. Abiram for being here. Share with us your input, please.
Sure thing. Vasu Abhiraman, Senior Policy Counsel at the ACLU of Georgia. I like what this bill is trying to get at. I know a lot of probate judges don't want to do this anymore, even the good ones, right? What's an interesting part of this bill is crossing out the compensation for a probate judge, $385 a month. That is nominal compensation for this kind of responsibility. It's interesting to distinguish that from what they would get for handling traffic cases, which is $100 more a month. Elections versus traffic, right? I think the main concern to express here is that the way the law is designed now is the buck stops, the minimal number of bucks, but the buck stops with the probate judge. So there's a default structure, like a default variable that's set here, that's filled by the probate judge, and all of the duties and this is code section. Oh, my Westlaw just refreshed, but I think it's, I was looking up the code section that listed the powers and duties of the superintendent and includes everything that you need to run an election. So at least right now in the law, there's a default structure where one person will be responsible unless the local delegation has changed it for something else. The question is what's going to happen now? I know the bill says, for example, that there's a board that's going to be established and then they appoint or they hire a local election supervisor. But what money are they going to get paid? You know, how easy is it going to be to find that person? In a small county, will they have to try to get somebody full time? Or can they get somebody who is part-time? I think these are unanswered questions. Hopefully these counties would figure it out. But right now there's a default structure that means even if they don't figure it out, the probate judge will be able to handle it. Want to reiterate one of the points about how a number of these counties don't have county parties. And we might recommend some language that says in the event that a county party hasn't been established, the relevant state party shall consider and make nomination. That's one way to maybe fill that gap. And then I think the question is, so we already have some counties where a local act has produced a local board. What happens in these counties if this bill passes and they want to go that direction eventually? Is it a race to see like if they can do it first? So I think that's one of the other gaps that maybe needs to get addressed in this bill. But overall, it's kind of good to get at this. And the design of the template board here, it's a pretty good one. Perhaps the county commission should be the one that appoints the fifth member. Maybe that can be the probate judge, who knows? One point of clarification, if a probate judge has an opponent in an election, then two more members are appointed by the relevant county parties, I believe. And then that board is a 3-member board that runs the election. Folks can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, but those are some of the gaps that may need to be addressed here. Overall, if probate judges don't want to do this anymore, it probably is good to figure out solutions.
To consider options.
Mhm.
We appreciate your input. And as I said earlier with Ms. Ali and others, this is a developing process. This is an opportunity for us to receive your input and receive your concerns. But as we move forward, we have to make a decision about whether we wish to pursue an election board on a local level
Mhm.
across Georgia, or whether
Mhm.
we choose to leave it as is or somewhere in the middle. Thank you for your input.
Can I give
I-
one quick example?
Absolutely.
There's a new voter registration system in Georgia called Jarvis. We have high hopes for it being able to, fix a lot of the issues the old voter registration system had. Right now in the counties with the probate judge, they're kind of responsible for going to the trainings and learning this tool or ensuring that somebody who reports to them does. When you have a 5-member board and it's kind of loosey-goosey in terms of who reports to them and who they can send to stuff like that, you might end up with finger pointing. You're supposed to go to this training. You're supposed to go to this training. At least now in these counties, there is, for better or worse, that one person where the buck stops for stuff like that.
Thank you. Thanks for your input. Mr. Edwards, would you like to go first, or would you rather someone else move forward first? You want to come and represent the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia? This is Mr. Edwards, Todd Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Todd Edwards with ACCG. I don't mind going first. We've want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and it's something we've been working on for the past couple of years, as well as with the probate judge and sharing mutual, each other's concerns, ideas, et cetera. And I most especially want to thank you for not trying to push this forward bill this year. And I'm going to repeat some of the issues that I brought up in our conversations. So it is a changing number. I believe we heard 24 counties currently have probate judges. As mentioned earlier, a lot of these are very small, rural, less populated and poorer counties or less affluent counties. It would possibly have a significant impact on these counties. We have to look at everything, cost, including cost, and these decisions that are being made, not just primarily because there will be more staff that cannot be shared, from the probate's office. Some full-time staff, as mentioned in here, we do appreciate it. And I'll get to a moment, with approval of the county, some of the language that's in there. Now we did oppose the bill when it was introduced, and I went straight to him. He knows that, our concerns. But you can currently do this through a local act. And that was mentioned earlier, and that's how it's traditionally been done. And every year, 2 or 3 more counties go to an election board, which I personally think is a good idea. But for ACCG, we prefer going through the local act. Now, why is this a good idea? Well, elections have become a lot more complicated in the past several years. Election superintendents, boards have been charged with much more many tasks. They've been hit with numerous lawsuits challenging most all aspects of elections, numerous insurmountable, I would say, open records requests by certain parties, both national and at the state level, hit immediately after the election, before certification, then after certification. There's legislation this year. We've shared our concerns on sealing the ballots, more open records requests, limited time, limited staff. These have real impacts on elections. Counties fund elections primarily at the county, state, and federal level. Little state money. We have appreciated working with the Secretary of State's office, but that was mentioned earlier, and a consideration in that regard would be appreciated. Mentioned earlier, no outside money. There's another bill circulating. I thought that was understood earlier, but it's being reinstated this year, forwarded via the county commissioners. The scrutiny, the politicalization, the polarization, it continues. To be honest with you, I wouldn't want the job, and I hear from a lot of election folks, particularly on the amount that they're getting paid, that it's getting harder to recruit and retain quality people for these positions. So yes, a board is not a bad idea. We have to consider the funding. With that, I'd like to go through a couple of provisions of the bill. And you've already gone over them. A lot of it's just housekeeping. If you're going to remove them, just crossing them out from certain responsibilities. On lines 40 and 41, it's just down to over 43 of 385 per month, 385.90. Supplements are something that needs to be taken into consideration. So currently, if I understand it, the election or probate judges are on the concurrent election cycle as presidents of the United States. So their terms would end on, and I always get my words mixed up on here, but I guess December 31st of 2024, the new term would start on January 1st, 2025, if I'm mistaken. If this bill were to come law, we would very much like that date to coincide with the effective, the ends of their terms with the effective date of this bill for a couple of reasons. One, we would ensure that salary supplement end at the end of their term. Currently, if it went into 1 year into the next term, we can't end it. They would get paid, until the end of a term. So they would have to coincide. And that's not only the state required supplement that you see in statute here. A lot of them have local supplements that are provided in addition to the state supplement. Baldwin County, I don't know if it's local supplement, but additional local funding is provided to some of the larger counties that remain to have the probate judges, both through supplements, both through for funding the office, additional staff. So there are mostly small counties, but some larger counties, but all that we would have to account for that budgetarily, both the supplements, getting rid of the office, shifting the funds, et cetera. So again, if you're discussing timelines, I think 2025, January 1st, 2025 would make the same sense. I'm going to go through a couple of more provisions of the bill. The dates on lines 80 Yeah. And lines 84, again, that would goes back to requesting that the termination be on 25 pursuant. Well, that's a setup date on line 80 and then 84. It's the effective. I think how boards are set up vary all over the state for better or worse. And each year we see many more bills and local legislation introduced. Some of them do go by the party recommendations, some not. Some of them would argue that they would like to keep it as partisanism or the parties out of it as much as possible to try to be nonpartisan in it. Which way you go with it, some people are going to be happy, some people are going to be upset, but they all over the board, but that needs to be careful, given careful consideration. The judge's idea, I find interesting the grand jury, then having the judges appoint. There was a question earlier about what if the counties just were forced to select the two nominees from the parties and appoint them? Perhaps that can work, but I know that the parties can't appoint them directly. So I'm not an attorney and I don't claim to have the answer, but they do have to be appointed, I believe, by governing authority. We learned that lesson from the Ethics Commission or Committee in DeKalb County a few years ago. I'm almost done here, Mr. Chairman. I know time is of the essence and I sincerely appreciate y'all giving us this opportunity. A lot of what I was going to say has already been gone over. The two speakers before me did a great job with some of the considerations that, quite frankly, I hadn't thought of previously. Trying to answer some of the questions that have been asked. Does it do away with election superintendents? I don't believe statewide. Didn't see that in the bill. It was asked why we're discussing this now. We want to thank you for that. I know you've got important things to do, but I'm also happy it was held up and that we're giving this consideration. You had one of our chairmen, John Graham, testify. We sincerely appreciate that. Could there be a county where probates could continue, not under this bill? I don't see that happening. And the probate judges can speak more on that. We discussed it briefly back there. And funding, again, is going to be one of our bigger concerns. I would go on. I don't need to. We've been very much a part of the discussion. Our feedback has been solicited, and we're very thankful for that and this opportunity, and look forward to continue working toward a solution. Boards are a better idea. How do we do it? On what time frame? How do we do it with the funding? How are they appointed? All things that need to be considered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. You have a question? The senator from Savannah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the gentleman from ACCG. We got a saying in the country that says, don't worry about the mule, just load the wagon. And it looks like the mule has been the probate court judges, and the wagon is everything that you can't find somebody else to do. You dump it on them. And now they're at a point where they're running traffic court. They are vital records, doing birth certificates, concealed carry permits, you name it, guardian ad litem, everything that comes through the probate court to take somebody's rights. They got to do all of that. Probate court judge is a tough job. And so I think we ought to be working with that judge, those probate court judges, to find a way to help alleviate them, because you can't do everything. And oftentimes I always hear that even in my county, and we have a probate court judge, a probate court judge can do that. Even when it comes to the filling of a vacancy with a sheriff, that's got to go to the probate court judge, and they got to do it. So they got a lot of work. And I know that you represent the counties, but I'd like the counties to come to the table a little bit more on some of this stuff.
Great point, Senator. In fact, that's why I'm here. And I stated that we look forward to working with them toward this process. If I'm not mistaken, a lot of those responsibilities are spelled out in state law, and they do get compensated appropriately through the supplements also required in state law.
Well, it might be something we need to look at on how we compensate our probate court judges.
Appreciate the comments, sir.
Thank you for the comments. We're going to invite some of our probate judges to share some insights. I'm going to start with Mr. Scott Chastain from Gilmer County. I want the committee to know that Mr. Chastain has been a tremendous asset and resource as we've begun this discussion, begun this process. You're welcome to bring your colleagues with you, Scott. So I'll have each one of them introduce themselves as we go along. But we have probate judges who can speak to this issue. I appreciate y'all taking the time to come and share your insights.
Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed, indeed.
I want to say thank you, Mr. Chairman and the committee for allowing us, Scott Chastain, the probate court judge of Gilmer County up in North Georgia. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you. I'm glad that we're at least at the table to discuss this. That's very important to some probate judges all throughout the state of Georgia. I took office in 2017, and when I took office in 2017, elections were not what they are in 2023. A comment was made a while ago about elections have off years. I've not been off from elections since the beginning of 2022.
You're right.
We've got an election going as I'm sitting here right now back in my home county. So the off years are getting fewer and fewer between. But the training and the requirements necessary to continue to do the good job that we have to do, or that we do is adding up and taking its toll on a lot of us. And Senator Mallow mentioned a while ago, is it right? Is that right, Mallow? Senator Mallow mentioned a while ago about probate court judges being nonpartisan. And in my county, that's not the case. I'm partisan. I have to qualify for a party. So when I'm on the ballot and someone's running against me, it puts me in a bind. I do have to form a board of 3 members, which I'm the chairman of, because I'm supposed to be the nonpartisan chairman of this board, but I qualify as partisan. So those things make it very challenging for us as probate judges. And as already mentioned a while ago, the weapons carry, marriage license, vital records, traffic court, all the other things that we do and we truly love to do and serve. As the judge said earlier, the elections were kind of like a part-time job that we had, but now it has turned into a full-blown, full-time job that someone needs to be paying attention to every day, every minute of the day. And it's got to where I'll speak for my county, I'm not able to do that anymore. So I do appreciate the idea of the bill. The intent, like you said in the beginning, was to remove the jurisdiction from the probate courts. That's why I'm here. I'm asking this committee to consider doing that for the probate judges that remain, that find this very challenging. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy.
My name's Darren McCoy. I'm the probate court judge in Evans County since 1992. I'm in my 31st year.
Wow.
When I started, elections was a part-time job, a very simple process. Basically, 2 to maybe nearly 3 weeks was the election period that I spent. We had no early voting at the time. And basically a week to 10 days before you went in preparing. And by Friday after the election, you were through, you were certified and sent your returns to the state, filed another set with the Clerk of Superior Court and filed another set in your office. I'm at the point where I can no longer efficiently do my duties as probate judge and election superintendent. Judge Chastain talked about being year-round elections. I'm in the middle of conducting 3 elections right now that will accumulate next week. Since 2020, it has not stopped. We are bombarded weekly, if not daily, with open records requests. All kind of requests. One of the most recent ones was make, model, and serial number of every piece of voting equipment that my county possessed. Demanding to physically hand count ballots. There's a lawsuit currently going on now in Spalding County where all 159 election superintendents are being sued because of not being allowed to touch some ballots or machines, or people are showing up with all kind of equipment wanting to do audits on the machines to see if they've been hacked. It's a constant battle that we are fighting with open records requests. we are, of course, directed to our county attorneys to advise us on those requests. With due respect, I have a very, very good county attorney who knows the open records law, but there's no way that I could depend on him to know what I could give the public off of my election server. They're trying every way they can to get in and find something that we're doing wrong. If we're on a crunch period time, it's those requests explode. If they know we're on a deadline to certify, they just come in, and most of the requests are coming not from my constituents in my county, but even mostly constituents out of state. The risk limiting audits that we are now doing after the general election, I know it's talked about being on the table to do after every election. That process delays us completing the election for about 2 weeks. So 2 weeks out from the election, we're still waiting to do the risk limiting audit as the final phase. We have to wait for every county to certify, then we have to wait for the state to certify, and then we have to wait for direction from the state as to which batch of ballots that we're going to audit. I think auditing is a good idea. It puts, maybe some of the bad ideas that the public has about the process out of their mind. But here you're extending the election period for 2 weeks. Another thing, it was mentioned about the registration duties. As an elected official, each county where the probate judge serves as the election superintendent, you have a separate board of registrars. Senator Williams has served in that capacity. That was put in place because we are elected officials, because we are on the ballot. We have no duties whatsoever with the registration process and with the issuance of absentee ballots. Now, the absentee ballots are turned over to us for counting, but we do not play a role. But there again, you have a separate office already established in that county that does the registration and absentee duties that our duties of superintendent could be rolled into without having to create another office in the county. Yes, you may have to have additional staff, but you already have, that office established. It wouldn't be like you having to create another office. It was mentioned about the probate judge serving on the election board. I think Georgia law currently prohibits any elected official from serving on a board of elections in any county. So that would prohibit us from being involved in that process. There again, the talks of one person, and generally I want to say the probate judges are credible in what we have done, but we are one person. I have a staff of one full-time clerk and one part-time clerk. Those two clerks keep the court running while I'm in the back buried into conducting the election. I'm one person. I have nobody to help me. Yes, my clerks can do, will you fill out this form for me? Will you do this? But pretty much I am it. We've had two probate judges in the 2022 year who were election superintendents that died the week before the election, and those counties were struggling to fill those duties. I feel like I can't get sick. I can't die during the election. I can't, I'm limited in caring for my elderly mother during that time. So the time has come, it's all changed.
You're right.
Fine. Thank you, Judge. Please.
All right. My name is Kevin Holder. I'm the Executive Director of the Council of Probate Court Judges of Georgia. We represent all 159 counties. So just to add some context to a couple of things. So of the 28 probate judges, because there are 28 probate judges who have elections jurisdiction right now, 27 want to be out of elections. Of the 28, 17 are traffic judges, 10 are magistrate judges, 9 of them do both. And then you also have some of these probate judges who also serve as the municipal court judge of some of the cities in their county. Unfortunately, as Judge McCoy mentioned, we had 2 probate judges who died prior to an election in 2022. we had two probate judges who died during the 2020 election, and those counties were scrambling as well. To Judge Chastain's point, he runs partisan. Of the 28 probate judges who do elections, 30% of them are partisan judges. So when there comes a point where the probate judge has opposition in the county, currently in the code in 24-274, it establishes that the probate judge and one member from each of the respective parties forms that board that puts their probate judge in an untenable position when they run as partisan. Because do you make decisions to vote for, whatever the right decision is, or do you go against what your party is? And unfortunately, for some of our judges, it's put them in that predicament. And that's it.
Thank you. Hey, a question, Senator? Hatchett.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, the one judge that is still for it, where are they from? You said 27 were opposed and there's 28. Who's the one?
I'll just say they're along I-16.
Okay. I would say that it's not unanimous. We acknowledge that it's not unanimous. And I want to say, I really appreciate the judges coming and the executive director coming and the ACCG being here because you put a face on the challenge. You share with us the reality that says this is what you're dealing with on a day-by-day basis. Vice Chairman Williams.
Thank you. I want to thank y'all for being here. I've heard it. I do have a close relationship with Judge Blackwell. He and I worked very well together my 16 years there, and I enjoyed elections. I think what we're looking for is uniformity. You've got 159 counties, so in essence, you could have 159 different ways that this election board could be set up. So I think we need to find some uniformity statewide. And I found out that people move a whole lot in these counties. So when you think, and the others, when you think it's off elections, it's not. That John Doe moves 2 blocks down the street. So all of a sudden he's in a new precinct. He's in a new congressional district. He's in a new Board of Education district. And there's a lot to keeping all of that and the pressure. I saw it through my years, and I'm just glad that I wasn't in it in 2020.
Yeah, the
and through that
redistricting
mess.
was a nightmare.
Yeah, it was a nightmare from our side too, just watching it. But my hat's off to y'all, and thank you for that job. How many Chastains are up there in your county?
We have a bunch of it.
My great grandmother was a Chastain from up there.
Chastain's a common surname.
There's where the woodwork up there.
All right.
I would like to make one comment.
Sure.
about Mr. Taylor brought up a good point about the January 1, 2025 time limit on that. I think that you would find that the 27 probate judges in favor of this would have no issue with the January 1, 2025 timeframe because it would end our term, it would end the supplement, and it would be, I hate to even use this word, but it would be a potential off season for elections because it would be a 20.
Would give us a year
Yes, sir.
for the normal election cycle. But as you pointed out, elections seem to be ongoing.
Yes, they are. They are.
Let me just throw a couple of comments out and get your reaction to them. Is there a potential for a hybrid? Is there a potential for a hybrid structure where you have a local election board, but yet you have either a registrar, current registrar, or current probate judge in some way being the superintendent, the election superintendent, in some kind of a hybrid fashion where you have an election board, but you also have that individual who could continue in the role of superintendent? Is that an option? Is that something you would think about or consider?
Mr. Chairman, most of the counties with election boards have an executive director,
Right.
an election supervisor, or what, some sort of title where they conduct the election duties under the direction of the board. They are a hired employee of the board. That is a lot of the cases.
And I understand the workload and the challenge,
Correct.
but Judge McCoy or Judge Chastain, if your county commission chairman was sitting next to you and the two of you had to agree on how's the best way to handle elections, how would they respond? How would they view this challenge? Do they want to just leave it with you and not engage, or would they be in a position to say, we support the concept, we're looking for a mechanism to move forward? How would they likely respond? I know that's hypothetical.
In Gilmer County, it has been since I've been in office, it's been, we would rather you do it. We would rather you continue to do elections because there's a distaste of a board in general. Didn't really want to go to a board, wanted to stay with the probate judge. And I know that local legislation has been brought up here today, and it is in the code. It can be done that way. But in a lot of our counties, what we're finding is because of the $385 a month, why would they want to form a board?
Yeah, right.
They're getting a superintendent to do it for nearly nothing. So why change that? And I get that, I do, but I've made comments in my county about, I don't know if the $4,600 I get a year to be the election superintendent is going to cover the lawsuit. If I'm distracted because I'm working on a gun permit or a marriage license and I do something with elections that I didn't mean to do, but I'm human. That's why I think it needs to be somebody that's full-time focused only on elections and let us go do the job that people elected us for.
Thank you. Chairman, Judge McCoy.
There are time limits on things that we do as probate judges, mental health cases, incapacitated adults, there's emergency situations that it doesn't matter if you're in the middle of election day or whatever, this has to be done. And I have had those situations arise in the last few years where I have had to go in a back room at a voting precinct and do an emergency hearing because there was something critical, a time limit there that law enforcement, the public had to come find me in a polling place for me to switch hats and do my duties as probate judge. And I mean, it's a full-time job now. And it's just nearly impossible to do all of the duties. I might add on Mr. Holder's comment about when we are opposed in an election and there's a 2-member board appointed to overlook our shoulders. Generally 99.9% of those instances, those 2 people appointed to form the board to look over our shoulders are inexperienced and have been a voter, and that's about the extent of their experience. And they are, as they're trying to do the best of their ability to watch over us, they're not familiar with election laws, and it should not be a case any longer where an elected official is on the ballot serving as the election superintendent.
Thank you. Vice Chairman.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. What about a multi-county election board for some of these small counties? Just wanted to throw that out there just for food for thought. Also, county commissioners. I was a county commissioner one time, had no idea what went into elections. But then as I was chief registrar, one of my county commissioners got defeated. He had been a long time county commissioner. I got him appointed to our board of registrars. It was an eye-opening experience. He had no idea, and he told me many times, I had no idea what went into these elections. And it's even gotten so much more complicated since then.
It's basically a lot of times a 7-day work week for us, especially during elections. It's taking that to fulfill all of our duties with all the different hats that we wear.
Yeah, whenever you completed your early voting on Friday, then you had to then go through your poll paths and make sure you gave everybody credit for voting.
Correct.
And then get it uploaded and downloaded for election day. So yeah, it was 7 days a lot of times.
Thank you all for your input. I'm very grateful for your presence. The hour is late. We've spent a couple hours exploring this concept, and I want to commit to the committee and to the to the probate judges and to the counties and the rest of the constituents that we'll continue to vet this issue, seek your input, and hopefully come up with something that makes the best sense for Georgia. We appreciate you.
Well, no, we are willing to answer any questions, do anything to make this task easier.
Your presence here demonstrates your willingness. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all so much.
Without further responsibilities, we will stand adjourned.
Be safe going home.
Thank you.
Right.
Y'all.